What was the true damage that Horus inflicted on the Emperor during the climax of the heresy?
Sire, what are your orders?
Asks Rogal Dorn, massive dark-haired Primarch of the Imperial Fists. His golden armour has lost its lustre, is dented in a dozen places by bolter shells. The Emperor doesn't answer. He is lost within himself, seeking answers to his own questions. He has come at last to the dark place, the time of testing. The era hidden from his precognitive vision, and beyond which he cannot see. The moment he has always dreaded has arrived.
Is my time over, he wonders? Is this where it all ends? Is this why I've reached the limits of my prophetic powers? Is this where I die?
The Battle of Terra stands as the epochal event in the history of the Imperium of Man, the cataclysmic culmination of the Horus Heresy. Across the besieged Throneworld, brother fought brother in a war that tore the galaxy asunder. Yet the true final confrontation occurred not on the blood-soaked earth of Terra itself, but within the esoteric confines of the flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, where the divine emperor of mankind faced his favoured son and betrayer, the Warmaster Horus Lupercal. This duel, a clash of titans wielding powers both corporeal and ethereal, did not merely decide the fate of the war, it inflicted upon the Emperor wounds so profound, so devastating, that they would define his existence and the nature of the Imperium for the next 10 millennia. A deep dive into what Horus did to the Emperor reveals not just physical injury, but a fundamental alteration of reality for the master of humanity. Greetings all, I'm your guide, the Archivist. Today I will dive into the details of the damage that Horus inflicted upon the Emperor. Before we begin, please make sure to like the like and subscribe waypoints, or join to become an acolyte down below, so that more people can learn from the archives. By the time the Emperor teleported aboard the Vengeful Spirit, accompanied by a select few, the situation was dire. Horus had lowered the Void Shields, a seemingly suicidal act that allowed the Emperor access, but also showcased his absolute confidence, born from the dark power surging through him. The deck of the Vengeful Spirit was warped, a horrifying landscape of flesh, machine and psychic energy, a physical manifestation of the corruption that had consumed the Warmaster. When the Emperor finally stood before Horus, he saw not the son he had raised and trusted, but a being transfigured by the ruinous powers, radiating an aura of malevolent divinity that rivaled his own. The initial stages of the confrontation were marked by a stark imbalance. The Emperor held back, his heart heavy with the pain of betrayal, perhaps clinging to a sliver of hope that his son might yet be redeemed, or perhaps strategically waiting for the opportune moment. Horus, however, was under no such compunction. Empowered by the Chaos Gods to a degree previously unimaginable, he attacked with a ferocity and power that shattered conventional understanding. His blows were not just merely physical strikes, they were conduits for the raw, corrupting energy of the warp itself. Horus unleashed a barrage of attacks that tore through the Emperor's golden armour and flesh. Described in various accounts, these weren't just standard combat blows. They were infused with psychic force and the dark blessings of chaos. The Warmaster's physical strength, already immense due to his Primarch nature, was amplified to cosmic levels. He struck with his claw, the talon of Horus, a potent weapon in its own right, tearing rends in the Emperor's flesh that bled not just blood, but light and energy. Psychic lightning, raw power drawn from the warp and channeled through Horus's transfigured form, lashed out, searing the Emperor's eyes, symbolic as well as literally blinding, striking at his vision for humanity's future. Beyond the overt physical devastation, Horus waged a psychological and spiritual war. He didn't just attack the Emperor's body, he assaulted his mind and soul. Horus, armed with the knowledge gleaned from the dark chaos gods, taunted the Emperor, exposing perceived failures in his great plan, twisting truths, and revealing the Emperor's own hidden doubts and secrets. This psychic onslaught was insidious, seeking to break the Emperor's will, to undermine his faith in humanity, and to drive him to despair. It was an attempt to utterly annihilate the Emperor's being, not just his physical form. The injuries inflicted here were perhaps the most profound, blows struck directly at the Emperor's psychic essence, designed to strip him of his vast power and connection to the warp. The sheer power wielded by Horus was formidable. He was, for a time, the favoured champion of the four great Chaos gods combined, a vessel of their malefic might. This allowed him to inflict wounds upon a being who was, by all reckoning, a perpetual and a psychic entity of unparalleled power. The injuries were not mere cuts and bruises on a mortal frame, they were fundamental damage to a near-divine form. Limbs were broken, armour was slagged, and psychic shields that had millennia of power behind them were fragmented and torn asunder. The Emperor, for perhaps the first time in his long existence, was utterly laid low, his divine light dimmed by the shadow of chaos embodied by his son. Accounts vary in the specifics, often dwelling on iconic moments: Horus impaling the Emperor, shattering his armour, blinding him with psychic force. Each description reinforces the sheer brutality and efficacy of Horus's attack. The Warmaster was not just fighting, he was dismantling the Emperor, piece by physical and psychic piece. He was aided by the very essence of the ship around him and the palpable presence of the Chaos Gods themselves, who poured their power into their champion, eager to see the architect of the Imperium undone. Despite the overwhelming power brought to bear by Horus and his dark patrons, the Emperor endured. His perpetual nature allowed his form to resist total dissolution, although the regeneration was clearly struggling against the sheer weight of the inflicted damage. His immense psychic will, though battered and bruised by Horus's psychological warfare, never fully broke. He weathered the storm, enduring the psychic torments and the physical devastation. The turning point, as is widely recounted, came with the sacrifice of an innocent, often cited as an imperial guard named Alanius Pius, depending on the specific law source consulted. Witnessing such loyalty and sacrifice finally broke the Emperor's self-imposed restraint or despair. Seeing the true irredeemable nature of what Horus had become, and the cost of his own hesitation, spurred the Emperor to unleash the totality of his power. Accounts conflict upon the exact way the Emperor destroyed Horus. When the Emperor finally struck back, it was with a force that annihilated Horus's physical form and inflicted a wound upon his soul from which the Chaos Gods could not save him. However, later interpretations of the lore say the Emperor used an anathema blade, fitting for his title given by Chaos, to stop Horus's heart and finally kill him. But this final decisive blow came at an almost unimaginable cost. The damage sustained by the Emperor during Horus's onslaught was irreparable by conventional means. The psychic scars, the physical mutilation, and the drain on his power from enduring the warp-infused attacks, these were not injuries that a being, even one as powerful as the Emperor, could simply walk away from. The immediate aftermath saw the Emperor retrieved from the Vengeful Spirit, his body broken, his lifeblood fading, his psychic energy flickering like a dying star. The wounds inflicted by Horus were not the end of the Emperor's life, but they were the end of his era as a physically present, active ruler. The damage was too severe, the psychic backlash too profound. To survive and, more importantly, continue performing the vital psychic functions necessary for the Imperium's survival, maintaining the Astronomicon to guide ships through the warp, and holding shut the webway gate beneath the Golden Throne to prevent demon incursion into Terra, the Emperor had to be interred within the complex machinery of the Golden Throne. The Golden Throne is not merely a life support system, it is a prison, a machine that sustains the broken body and harnesses. A machine that sustains a broken body and harnesses a colossal psychic presence. The wounds Horus inflicted left the Emperor's physical form a ruin, incapable of independent function. His psychic self, while still immensely powerful, was now anchored to this terrible device, its energy largely consumed by the twin tasks of psychic navigation and demon containment. The blinding, the torn flesh, the shattered bones, the psychic scarring. These injuries are the perpetual state of the Emperor aboard the Golden Throne. He is a living corpse, a being of immense power trapped by the physical limitations imposed by the damage sustained in that final duel. The state of the Imperium in the 41st millennium is a direct consequence of the wounds Horus inflicted. The Emperor cannot walk among his people, cannot guide them directly, cannot personally combat the multitudinous threats that plague the galaxy. His absence, forced by his injuries, created a power vacuum that led to the rise of the High Lords of Terra, the stagnation of technology, and the grim, brutal nature of the Imperium, which is built upon ceaseless sacrifice in his name. The faith in the Emperor as a god, prevalent across the galaxy, stems in part from the sheer scale of his suffering and sacrifice, embodied by his broken form on the Golden Throne.
A father, if he is truly a father, is stronger than a son, no matter how far that son has come.
In conclusion, the Emperor's injuries represent far more than just battle damage. They were a physical and psychic shattering inflicted by a son upon his father, amplified by the dark power of chaos. Horus succeeded in breaking the Emperor's body and forcing him into a perpetual, agonizing vigil on the Golden Throne. While the Emperor ultimately vanquished his son and saved humanity from immediate annihilation, the cost was immense and irreversible. The injuries sustained in that single climactic duel reshaped the galaxy, defining the Emperor's eternal sacrifice and cementing the grim darkness of the far future. The scars of that battle are worn not just by the Emperor, but by the entire Imperium of Man. And so I have now covered the content for this video, but if there's anything that has been missed, please share them in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this content, continue your journey into the librarian with the video displayed on screen. The vast wealth of the archives continues to reveal new knowledge of the dark history of the 40K verse.
In the grim dark of the far future, there is only war.